Hello and welcome to another Excel video with Rich Kerr. In this scenario, we're going to look at some of the various ways I can populate a list of data semi-automatically with Excel. So I'll just sort of create a few columns of data and show how that can happen. So let's say I want to create a sequence of numbers. Let's say that my number sequence begins at 500. I'll just pick that. And let's say I want to go to 515. And so if I have two seed values, I can select them both like that. I'll zoom out a little bit. So with the two seed values, I can now use the autofill handle in the lower right hand corner and drag down, and you'll see that it picks up the same sequence, so it's going by 15 each time. So you could do that by any increment that you wish by setting up two seed values. You could also do something with, say, dates. So let's say I enter March 17th of 2012, and I'm interested in seeing a sequence of numbers that goes week by week. Actually, there's a couple of ways you could do this one. If I double-click the autofill handle, I don't necessarily need a second date value. I could do that, right? I could say 3/19/2012 and then use the two seed values as I did in column A and drag, or in this case I'll just double click. Since there's data already on the left, it'll go down as far as the data in column A. So you could do the same thing. You could have two starting values and fill down. So in this case, since I did 317 and then 319, it went to 321 and 323. But let's look at another way we could do this. With dates, even without a secondary value to specify an increment, if I fill down, it initially goes just one day at a time, 317, 318, etc. But there's an autofill option button that appears adjacent to the fill list. So when I click it, Excel recognizes that the data I have filled is date-based data. So I have a number of options. For example, I could decide to fill only weekdays, in which case it doesn't include any weekend dates in the list. So I can see it's going from 317 to 319. If we were to change the format of those cells, we can see that 317 was a Saturday. So by choosing fill weekdays, it skipped over Sunday and went to the 19th. And when the next week rolled around after Friday the 23rd, it jumped ahead till Monday the 26th. So we have that as an option. Okay. We could also drag that back up. We could decide with our fill options to fill months. So if I choose fill months, it's now going to the 17th in the next month and the next month, etc., etc. So it's fairly intuitive in terms of how it handles date fills. Let's look at times. If I go to column C and I enter a value of, let's say, 9:30 a.m., like that, and I want to have a list of times, let's say in 10-minute increments, then I'll enter 9:40 a.m. as a secondary value. Let's do that, 9:40 a.m. And then I'll select both, and like we did before, I will double click to fill down, and because of the initial increment, we see that the next values go by 10 minutes as well. If we look at the options, we don't get the same kind of intuitive options for filling times as we do with dates. We just have sort of the standard things like I want to copy the cells instead of fill, which, by the way, it could be useful in some circumstances. If I choose copy cells, then it just repeated the items I selected, 9:30, 9:40, then it goes back to 9:30, 9:40 over and over again. So that's what you'll get normally when you fill. You could opt to fill just formatting or fill without formatting, but I'll leave it on fill series. To make our spreadsheet a bit more narrow, I'm going to switch the formatting in column B back to short date, so we have a bit more running room for our next example. In column D, let's say I want to create a list of items labeled item 001. So this is another fill method you can use. If I have text followed by a number, I can then fill that field, and the default behavior is to increment that number by 1. So if I have a certain numeric structure accompanying text, it will increment that as I go. Now I can still do the same thing. If I have item 001 and item 005 and I select those two, when I double click, then it's going by 4. So then 9, 13, etc. Yet another interesting one is if you do the word quarter or an abbreviation of quarter, like QTR. So unlike the previous example where it just continued to increment indefinitely, quarter knows to start back over after 4. So I have quarter 1, 2, 3, 4. It does not go on to quarter 5, as that wouldn't make sense. So that's kind of a built-in bit of intelligence on the fill series, and that works if I had done it as the letter Q followed by 1. So if I fill that, it has the same behavior. Or if I spell out quarter 1 like that, it'll do the same thing. It'll just start back after 4. And so finally, one of the other things I want to point out is the ability to create your own custom fill list. So if I go to my File tab and come down to Options, in Excel 2010, I'll need to go to the Advanced page within my Options screen and scroll down to Edit Custom Lists. And I can create my own list entries, and you might notice I have some added to the default list, which are the days of the week and the months of the year. So let's say I add in Picard, Riker, Troy, LaForge, and Data. And so I'll add those entries, and I'll click the Add button and click OK. Now one of the nice things, and then finally another OK. Oh, by the way, if you're in 2007, that option for creating a custom fill list that we saw on the Advanced tab, that's actually on the Popular tab or General tab. So that first tab in 2007 has that option. Okay, so now I can create a list, and even though I started my list on Riker when I set it up, I don't have to start with that in my data. I can start with Troy and then use that value and double click to fill down. So it picks up that pattern. So those are a few examples of autofill. Oh, there's actually one more that might be interesting. Let's say I wanted to fill a series of numbers, but I don't want to have to build the pattern in the way that I did in, say, column A or column C. If you go to the fill icon on the Home tab, or we'll first start out with a value. I'll say my value is 100, and then I'll go to the Home icon, or Home tab, and click the fill icon, which is that blue arrow pointing down, and choose series. In this case, I can tell Excel to create a series of data that's in that particular column. So where it says series N, I'll choose columns. It will be a linear growth, meaning each step of the growth of the number will be consistent. So I want a step value. Let's say we want to go by 5s, and I want to stop at, say, 1,000. So starting with 100, a linear growth rate in that column, going by 5s up to 1,000. And when I click OK, then that fills that data in, and we can see it has in fact gone all the way down to 1,000. So that's autofill, a few examples of autofill in Excel. I hope this is helpful. Please tune in again soon for more Excel videos. Have a productive day.